Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for Friday, the 22nd of February, at the end of another trading week. The bulls definitely jumped back into the market today. We saw a little bit of movement in tech. Not so much the NASDAQ. It moved, but still kind of in its little rangy situation. But the tech ETF actually saw some nice movement. Once again, the bulls just kind of say, yeah, any reason to buy is a good reason to buy, as we are really close, knocking on the door of that 2,800 on the S&P 500. Good afternoon, Claudia. Great to see you again. Welcome. We're glad to have you with us live. Always fun. I hope everybody had a great day, both in and out of the market, and are ready for. It's amazing how much faster the week goes when the market's closed on Monday. Seems like this one, they all go by fast. But this one really went by fast. But I hope you're all doing well. As always, guys, it is awesome to see each and every one of you. Hello, Em. Hello, Patricia. Hello, Tanner. Exciting times in the market, right? The bulls just keep on keeping on. We still have plenty of earnings, although, as we all know, we're kind of behind earnings season now. Still plenty of big name companies, around 40 or so S&P 500 companies coming out with earnings. Of note, Home Depot, kind of the big one next week. We have Booking, Lowe's, TJX companies, a lot of retail companies, Macy's, Urban as well. You've got AutoZone. So it'll be another interesting week in earnings. Of course, as you guys know, that can make some stuff happen. Ask Kraft Heinz, who reported yesterday after the close. Not a lot of great news there, and lost something like 27% here today. That is, the extreme, but that doesn't have to happen too often to get you always checking in on earnings, right? So we will see where that one takes us as we continue to get together. As we look at the intraday action on the market today, overnight, kind of had some nice movement, getting a nice little gap on the S&P, taking out that little bit of intraday resistance. Of course, when we met yesterday, we talked about the intraday, had kind of started to show a little bit of weakness relative to what it had been pretty much doing throughout the course of the week. Here on the open, breaking resistance on the S&P, giving everybody the buy sign that they wanted or that they were looking for, running up very strong, little bit of sideways action throughout much of the trading day. And then again, towards the close of the day, some nice upward movement, closing near the highs of the day for the S&P. Now we're at 27 at 92. So we are knocking on the door of that 28 or 2820, or what exactly you're calling it. I think just the best way to think about it is as a zone, and that is how I am treating it. Still a little bit of room before we get into it, but we might be testing it next week. We are so close at this point in time. Still a little room before we get there, because whether you call it 28 or 2820 or anything in between, really, not quite there yet. Continuing to show on our daily time frame, no real sell signals has basically been the case for quite some time now. We're going to be challenging that number, and you guys don't need me to tell you this, but everybody's looking at that number, right? So we'll definitely want to be keeping an eye on it. Break beyond that, in my opinion, we've still got plenty of upside. I do always expect resistance to be a challenge. It doesn't always work out that way, of course, but I will be treating it as it's a big deal. It should be tough to break. And so a break above that, I will definitely consider a bullish signal. Upon how many bullish signals have we had since this run started, right? So a little bit of room to go. Good afternoon, Andy. Great to see you, my friend. We're getting closer. We actually saw a little bit of movement here in the NASDAQ coming off of yesterday's candle. Haven't, I don't think, broken cleanly out of this little mini range that we're kind of hanging around at that 200-day moving average, but definitely close, kind of knocking on the tops that we put in throughout the course of the week, not closing above them, at least not in my opinion. A little bit of upward movement early next week. I will expect a run into approximately 7,200. So I do expect that to happen. I just have to get through this little sideways range before it can even try, right? So another, day where we're not out of that range. At least I don't think we're out of that range. I could see an argument if you were aggressive that it's close enough. But you guys know me, I'm always a little bit on the wimpy side. And that probably is not ever going to come as a surprise to you. So another good day over in the Dow, closing above 26. While that's not really a big resistance level, at least in my opinion, it's not. That is a big round number, right? And so if nothing else, a little bit of a psychological win maybe for the bulls, as if they needed any more psychological wins. Again, much like the S&P, we are working into that major pivot point, right? And that's something that we're going to want to be keeping an eye on. We may be testing it next week. We're close enough now that I think we have to at least be thinking about how we're going to handle it, whether it's closing bullish positions, hedging positions, keeping an eye on it. Everybody's going to probably approach that a little bit differently, and that's to be expected. But I think we're going to want to keep an eye on it, and we may be there here next week. A little bit more room, though. So we still have some room to the upside in the Dow, I think, before we really test that resistance level. Russell continues to show great strength, pushing through the little intraday resistance that we've developed over the last 2 trading days and closing just north of that 200 period moving average here today at 1590. We do, so that's another nice little bullish signal. It continues to be a very strong, index, if not the strongest. It definitely is in the conversation. We've taken out just about everything. We just have the big one left. And that's a big one, right? It was a double top for a little while, a major breakout point, a major breakdown point, just north of us at around 1610 is the number that I'm looking at. Little room between here and there. So again, much like the rest of the market, we've got a little bit of room before we're going to be bumping our heads into these old levels of resistance. If that breaks, that's going to be an area that I'm going to like a lot. I've liked it a lot already, but there's a lot of room beyond that. I expect that to be a challenge. I will be watching very closely as it gets to that area. But beyond that, we'll have to deal with some old floors, in that 1650 range, but not a lot of significant challenges, at least in my mind, in the Russell, if we can take out what I'm considering for the Russell, the big one. This one was big in my opinion, and this one is big in my opinion. And we'll see where it takes us. So again, everything closing in the green, just kind of carrying on what we've been seeing so often over the last several weeks. Buyers are willing to come in, really any chance that they get from a broad market perspective. So another day in the life of the market, the soap opera that is the market, right? So materials not really getting in on the movement here today. A little bit of a doji right below that resistance. I don't think that comes as a surprise to any of us. We know that's resistance. Lined it up with the 200 period moving average after a nice clean break of that. It just happened quick. Had our break on Tuesday, build it up on Wednesday, and now we've just been hanging out at resistance for a couple of days. As we've talked many times before, I personally do like this area. A lot of these stocks have already broken resistance and are looking pretty, interesting in my opinion. Breaking beyond this is certainly going to be a nice little bullish signal, I think, and will kind of lead me at least to believe that we're going to continue to work to the upside in the material sector, an area I really do personally like quite a bit going into next week. But the break is going to make me like it a lot more. Hanging around it makes sense to me. This is not a surprising development, struggling at resistance, having people taking profits off of that nice solid move that we had on Wednesday. Beyond that, I like the upside still, and I expect expect it to try. Maybe it will break, maybe it won't, but I do expect it to try, if nothing else. Over in energy, much like materials, not really getting in on things. Kind of zoom into today's candle. Not a whole lot to see here. Little back and forth on the intraday. Probably most importantly, to me at least, clearly holding above that old resistance. This current, what I'm thinking is new support. And as long as that is true, I will maintain a bullish posture on energy. Really, I won't take a bearish posture, at least the way it looks today, until we break down below 62. So while I don't necessarily want or anticipate seeing a deeper pullback than this old breakout point, it wouldn't keep me away from being interested if that's the way it wants to play out going forward. Still have some room, just taking a little bit of a breather here today, and really after a little bit of selling yesterday, just kind of a bland day today for the most part in energy. still some room. I still like this area. I still think there's room to work until we start getting into some new challenges as far as old levels of support and or resistance, but not really getting in on the action today. Same deal with the financials. They've been weird. They've been doing their job, but they've not ever done it really fancy, right? During this run, there's always seems to have been something that looks a little more interesting any given day than the financials. A little bit of a pullback off of the high that we set up on Wednesday. Nothing has changed, in my opinion, from a technical point of view. I still overall like this area, not as much as some other areas, but you can only have one or two favorites, right? They're like our kids. We say we don't have favorites, but usually, I guess I do. So it's easy for me to say, though. I'm not a parent, so I understand that it's easy for me to say that. So looking ahead, we do have this flat 200 above us. We do have a pretty major level of resistance beyond that. But as long as we're holding our swing low here, holding our moving averages, I will continue to probably like this area more than some other folks. At least some other folks that I know. I know I've been a little more optimistic about the financial sector than some of the other coaches as of late. But again, a lot of it might just be there's been other areas that have been better, and I understand that side of things. Industrials, just doing what they do, continuing to work up towards that resistance zone here at around $77. We're getting close. We still have some room. Continues to be very strong. Really having a hard time seeing sell signals just about anywhere in the industrial sector and the market as a whole, but really in the industrial sector. So just another day doing what it does, slowly filling up this space. And that's, how I always like to think. It's always fun when it does it like materials does it in one day, makes it easy on us. But what's more normal or realistic is it to take some time to fill up that space. At least that's what my expectations are always going to be. It's just a pleasant surprise when it does it quickly. We will, I think, want to keep an eye on that resistance level, not specifically as a selling, as a sell zone, at least not with the way the chart looks today. I wouldn't do that, but maybe to be thinking about profit taking, or at least keeping an eye on that. A lot of history in that ballpark, but we got a ways to go before we test that in reality. So it could happen soon, though, and I certainly wouldn't bet against it. Over in tech, finally getting in on the action. Seeing some nice movement and into it. Microsoft carrying on that break that they had yesterday, finally pushing through. Now, the NASDAQ hasn't sold me that it's pushed through, but it's kind of knocking on the door, it looks like to me. We just need a little bit of that final push, I think, in the NASDAQ. But jumping the gun here a little bit over in the communication services, a really solid day for technology after really a day of just kind of blandness, or a week of blandness, nothing really happening. Right? So basically up a little, down a little bit, going nowhere, at least as a collective sector. Really solid signal here today. I do like this area. I do expect there to be more room to the upside in the technology sector going into the next couple of weeks. I guess is probably the best way to look at it, at least in my mind. Really good, solid signal. A lot of the charts are looking interesting. A few of them are kind of knocking right at the door of resistance, like Oracle, knocking right at the door. There's a few other, MasterCard is right at resistance. So there's a few, stocks within the sector that are basically just knocking on that door, trying to break out of all-time highs or serious levels of resistance. Should be a fun week going into next week in tech. I anticipate it to be an interesting one. I like that signal personally. You guys know I've been kind of watching it, like the room. It's just not been cooperating this week, just been consolidating with the NASDAQ. I think that can open up some interesting opportunities potentially for us in that sector going into the next couple of weeks. Staples gap down pretty big. I mean, when you have one of your components, and I think Kraft Heinz is one of the top 10 holdings, or at least they were, in the staple ETF. I think they're kind of on the bottom end of the top 10, but still, they matter. I mean, that was a big gap, down 25% or so on the open. Kind of drug the sector down with it. Now, Kraft Heinz didn't do this, but the sector really did rally. It really did, and closing pretty strong on a nice, solid, bullish candle back above the 9 EMA. For whatever that is worth, it's not a bad thing, right? Whether it's a good thing or not, we could debate it, but probably never going to hurt from a bullish point of view. Still think from an overall perspective, the break here is the way to be looking at this sector. That is how I will continue to look at it. Individual components, I'm always going to be okay with, as a whole within this sector, but collectively, it needs to get through this. It does. I will like it. I will like it. And now that it's taken over a week to develop, when we first ran into it, after, I guess it would have been 2 weeks ago now, wasn't there. But now that we basically went sideways effectively, it's been a little choppy. We've seen some weird movement, but not really anything crazy, just a little bit of back and forth. Now that we've kind of went sideways at a level of old support that has been historically, at least in my opinion, an important area, a break above this, I will definitely like as a bullish signal. Now, I will want to wait, broadly speaking, for that to happen before I'm a huge fan of this sector. But there is room, and it's probably the best way, and we talked about it yesterday, is like the utilities ETF. When it finally took that out, there just wasn't a lot of overhead and some room for it to run, which is, of course, for me, always the thing I'm looking for the most. I'm a coward. I don't want anything in my way. I get scared of everything. So when there's not a lot of resistance and I get a break, I always like that. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. Haven't done it yet. Don't even necessarily expect it to happen so much as if it does, I will definitely be interested. And maybe utilities and the way they played out has a little something to do with that. Another really strong day in utilities, just filling up that space very nicely. We are now challenging the top. I mean, on this ETF, this is it. This looks really interesting from a bullish point of view on a weekly time frame. Looks like a big old cup and handle pattern, at least to me. A nice big cup, nice little handle, knocking on the door of that resistance. Definitely going to respect that resistance. I'm always going to respect all-time highs. I'm not going to assume it's going to break out, although there are several utility companies that already have broken out, which might help its chances of potentially breaking out. I really like where that looks overall. It is utilities. It's not the most exciting swing trading area as a general rule, although tell that to anybody who bought in even to the ETF 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when it broke out. Been a nice little easy run filling up that space. Knocking on the door, I expect that to be a challenge. The only thing I know with absolute certainty is the last 2 times we've tested that approximately 57, it's gotten ugly, at least short term. Not that I necessarily expect that this time, but I should never be surprised if history repeats itself, right? So I think we'll want to keep a very close eye on that 57. Beyond that, that's going to be a nice little break, in a little bit of a longer term view, I would say, with it being a long developing pattern, but very interesting pattern, I think, in utilities. And what I like the most about utilities right now, after a really choppy end to last year, and I know many of you guys were here with me in the recap listening to me complain about it, we've really been pretty well behaved. We broke out of this double bottom kind of along with the market. We were a little bit behind, but we broke out, we pulled back, created that higher low, broke out. I'm a wimp. I was looking at that 55 as resistance, but it pushed through, and it's really been very well behaved, I think, for the most part as of late. So my hat's off to you, utilities. A lot of times I'm not all that interested in you, but you definitely get a star for your movement so far this year. So over in healthcare, nice little bounce back day. We saw that big surge come off of the end of the day, that really, big candle the last 15 minutes. We saw it broadly in the market yesterday, but it was pretty large on the healthcare sector. And that follow through really happened to help it out here today. Very solid day. Don't really see any reason why we're not going to be working up to this resistance level. One more day, we do need, in my mind at least, we need one more day of upward movement. And then I think we can call this our new swing support level. Aggressively, I think we could call it that today. We did stop going down at yesterday's low and saw nice price appreciation. For me, I would like to see one more upward day of movement, and then we can kind of move this swing low, which will still be important. At least I will be moving it to this swing low. Shouldn't go below there. So definitely a nice move here today. Our support and resistance really hasn't changed. You may or may not put more or less emphasis on yesterday's low than I do, but I think we can look at it as a bit of support right now. Our swing low is still down here. Resistance really hasn't changed into that low 93s. Beyond that, up there around $96. So you had Merck knocking on the door of a breakout. it's just been a little weird. Like we talked about yesterday, it's just been kind of odd, maybe the wrong word, but there's just been little nitpicky newsy things, and there's just been lots of them. And not a great earnings report. Oh, a terrible earnings report. Good earnings report, but some guidance. It's just been little tiny things. Johnson and Johnson, getting in the news again. Just been a lot of little things kind of nitpicking at it as of late. And maybe that's why it's not at $96 today. We'll never know, right? But, it certainly had a nice bounce back day here today, still continuing to show very nice signals, at least in my opinion, across the board in healthcare sector. The discretionary sector showing some movement too. We are probably going to test 112 next week, unless basically we sell all week. We are probably going to test it. Whether we win, that's yet to be determined. But if we do, very interesting. Now we've got Lowe's, we've got Home Depot. I mean, these are some pretty big names within the discretionary space. They may have an impact on whether or not we're able to break that resistance. So we'll have to see as we work into those earnings. This is kind of the end of the line. We've had lots of little challenges. We've talked about them a lot. This is kind of the last real noticeable challenge. And again, it was a major pivot point, so it probably should be respected. Beyond this, little bit of space for us to work. Some of these things look nice. Lowe's looks nice. Home Depot does look nice, but we all know earnings can change that really quickly, right? So definitely some nice looking charts in my mind, at least in this area. A break, I'm going to like it. I'm going to like it as a bull. I'm probably going to like it more than some of the other coaches. If I had to guess, hasn't happened yet though. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But we're knocking on the door. It looks like we probably will test that resistance next week. Realistically, we're very, very close, and really any upward movement will probably get us knocking on that door. So that's going to be a fun one, I think, going into next week as well. Real estate just doing what it does. I mean, we've talked about it all, a lot. Any excuse to buy it is a good excuse, and that is just how it has been, and that how it continues to be. It's real estate, so I mean, these are generally not crazy Netflix type of stocks, right? But it is continuing to show just tremendous strength, and whether I don't even think that's an opinion-based thing. I think that is any reason to buy it. We've seen traders buy it just really for any good reason or any bad reason, even as of late. Today, certainly no exception. Closing strong yet again. Continues to be just a very, very strong area in the market, no doubt. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have our communication services, who are just our problem child these days. They won't listen. They don't mind. They just kind of do their own thing. And today is no different. A little bit of a bounce back day off of yesterday, but really, as we're seeing tech, break out, we're seeing utilities make big moves, bounce back in healthcare, discretionary. It's been a slow, choppy process, but we kind of saw that one coming. We just saw so many levels of resistance. That's not terribly surprising. I mean, everything's, to one extent or another, got in on the action. To me, when I look at the communication services, just like the whole market, we had that really great stretch at the beginning of the year, end of last year. Everything went up, right? I mean, virtually speaking, everything went up. Then it kind of didn't do much. Then it had that nice Facebook earnings, pushed us through, our swing high, our trend line, and then we've just done nothing. And I'm not a huge fan of it. Now, the video game companies, I've not been shy. I'm not a huge fan of them. Any of them personally. The Facebook and Google, they're big players in this ETF. They're not really doing a lot of movement, not really doing anything wrong, but not really doing anything right either, at least right now in the short term. So we continue to be kind of stuck in this limbo within this sector, I think. And until it comes out of this resistance level or breaks its support, quite honestly, from a purely technical perspective, this could, in my opinion, be one of those K-trade scenarios where a buy above resistance, sell below support. Now, with kind of the weirdness, at least in my mind, of this ETF, that's probably not the vehicle I'd want to trade. I don't really ever see myself wanting to trade this ETF, at least in the short term. Just from a purely technical point of view, I think we're starting to say, whichever side wins out of this range, whenever that happens, and it might be some time before we get a winner, I think that's going to be a signal. I'm definitely going to recognize it as a signal. A break above this resistance, I will absolutely call it a buy signal. A break below this support, I will absolutely call it a sell signal. So this is just kind of, for me as a whole, this area really is on a watch list. You wait and see. individually, yeah, am I willing to take trades? And if I were to see something nice on a, I'm not going to, I've kind of taken Netflix. They've been weird, and I've kind of put them on the, not this time Netflix list. But I'd understand someone wanting to buy into a break on Netflix or, EA. I'm not a fan, but I understand somebody maybe wanting to get in on EA or go bearish on, some of the other gaming stocks or whatever the individual charts are telling you. I'm okay with that within this sector because I think there's so many different types of things in this area that don't tie in tremendously to one another. Again, that just might be a me thing, but I just don't think Activision, Blizzard, and Facebook belong together. Yeah, you play on the internet, I guess, but again, maybe that's just me. I'm been known to be a little weird, so we're in a range, regardless of what I think. That is probably the moral of the story, and it definitely has not been taking advantage of this bullish run in the market, and I don't think that really is a debate. We could debate why, and I don't really know why, but it clearly has not got in on the action. So it's kind of one of those areas that for me, as it usually is, I mean, since its inception, it usually is. You guys who were with me at the beginning of the recap know this. I'm staying away from it. I like these areas better. So we'll see if what happens when and if it decides to break out of this range. There's definitely some room in there to try to work within that range. If that's your type of trading, it's not really my type of a good idea of a good time, though. So that is our sectors today. A little bit more of the same. Hats off to the utility sector, knocking on resistance and a very, in my opinion, pretty weekly chart. From a technical perspective, I think maybe a day or a week or two of consolidation at 57 on that weekly time frame, and then a break would be a really nice signal. We'll see if that's what we get. I'm not going to hold my breath, but definitely a nice move, potential breakouts, a nice break in the tech sector. So pretty solid bounce back day, if you want to call it that. I mean, yesterday was just the first selling day we've seen in a while. So any buying, I guess, would be a bounce back day today, right? So there we are in our sectors. Of course, over in the volatility index, really not a whole lot to see here, continuing to drift to the downside, as time progresses. Just again, traders feel like they've got a handle on the market right now. And as long as that's true, that's probably how the VIX is going to continue to perform. Over in the dollar, saw some movement to the upside, saw some movement to the downside, really undecided type of a day. Doesn't seem to know if this is a bull pullback or if it's something to not be trading as a pullback. Now, you guys know me. I'm not really interested in that as a pullback, but I do understand that argument. We do have 2 days now or a third day now to kind of think that we're maybe starting to build a little support level. We are making over the last 3 days, higher highs and higher lows. We've not really been able to build on that momentum, really, especially after today's close, but we are seeing a little bit of momentum on that side of things, which just kind of leads me to believe that this is a support level that we can be keeping an eye on, basically, is what that leads me to believe. Now, for me, it's still sideways overall, and I will continue to treat it as such until it decides to break out of this range one way or the other. And that might happen soon. It might take a while. It's the dollar. So neither of those things would surprise me. So gold, interesting development today. Worked right back into that old high yesterday after a really heavy day of selling, and it tried to get going a little too fast here today. And that's not what, if you aren't in gold, if you are in bull and gold, then the faster it wants to get going, better, right? You're fine with that. If you're looking at a new entry potentially, we want to see it kind of slowly turn around, right? The big, huge bounce back candle is not, at least my idea, of a good entry point. If I could have my way, at least. Very interesting, though, that we are holding the support. I couldn't fault anybody. I don't feel like this is the candle necessarily to do it, but I couldn't fault anybody for buying gold here. I certainly wouldn't be selling gold here for whatever that's worth to you. Holding this breakout point, hanging around those averages. Wasn't quite ready to get running like crazy today, but in my opinion, that is a good thing. I really think that is perfectly fine for every chart, certainly for golds. Over in silver, kind of same deal. Did see a little bit of buying coming back into it. For gold, pullback perfectly reasonable. Silver, for me, not really interested. I am officially, on the record of breaking above this is the signal that I'll be looking for. I think with the highs, and I think this week did us a big favor from a technical point of view in silver, even though nothing really, tremendous has happened. We tested that same high which, kind of lines us up at that old floor, which, we weren't quite, at least I wasn't quite sure exactly where to put it. I knew the area, I could clearly see the area, but I didn't know exactly where to put it and call it a break. For me, a close above what now is this, this line here, where our high point back here at about 16.13 and this high right here about the same location, that's going to be the signal that I'm going to be looking for from a bullish point of view. I would understand people looking at the pullback, but to my eyes, the gold pullback, appears, at least as of today, to be a more appealing area. But again, I'm not betting against silver by any stretch of the imagination. I just think the best signal that we're going to get is going to be the break of these highs that we set up here. Now, on multiple occasions and well beyond that, this big floor, which we've been keeping an eye on over the last several months together. And natural gas made me sweat it a little bit today. It ran right up to that top of that range, and it was looking like, are you really going to try to break out at the end of the day on a Friday, natural gas? Good luck to you if you do, but I'm glad it didn't. Ended up a nice little doji right at that resistance level. Going into next week, we'll have to see what the open does. I would not fault anybody, though, for calling a break of this resistance a bullish signal. I will call it a bullish signal. I just don't know if I will call it a tradable signal. If we gap up on Sunday's open, I probably won't call it. But if we go sideways, I'd love to do this. I'd love to sell back into support and then take another run. That is the picture that I want to paint. Not a huge gap, but a little bit of selling next week, and then working back. If we talked about this for a few days now, if we can develop a little bit of a range, a break out of that range is going to be appealing on both sides. To the downside, I don't think it will be as appealing to me, simply because of all of the history at 250. I think you have to respect that. So a bearish breakdown, there's just no room, in my opinion, that we could potentially take a trade on, at least on a daily time frame. Break to the upside, though, well, there's not really a whole lot between where we currently are and where that break would, of course, occur until our next level of resistance, which is quite a ways in the world of natural gas, right? So hopefully we stay within this range going into Monday. We will see if we get that or not. Not going to hold my breath, but it never hurts to ask. I would love to see, another at least few days of consolidation. And then, hey, if we want to break out, maybe we could talk. So I'm getting interested. And it's nice to say I've been watching natural gas with popcorn in hand and never thinking about anything other than what it do today. So maybe at least thinking about a potential opportunity, that's nice. So at least I think it is. I'm not sure which one of you said it, but when you say there's going to be a trade on natural gas, you're going to laugh or be surprised. And yeah, I feel the same way. Over in crude, as we wrap up here, bumping its head once again on that same intraday high. So now we have basically 3 days in a row, still holding support, still holding the recent breakout point, still increasing short-term moving averages. So in my mind, no sell signals or anything along those lines. But now we're developing a very clear top on that intraday. A break above that, I think we can call that a tradable signal. I think the real question isn't, can we call it a signal, is if you are looking at a new trade, what do you think about $59? That's going to scare me. Risk to reward won't be there. Now, if I'm already there, I'm going to really be happy to stick around. And I feel like that's a break of these little highs that we've set up this week. I feel if that's broke, getting to 59 is almost inevitable. Whether or not it is, we'll have to see. But I really will expect that to happen. Beyond that, again, I'm going to take it just like I usually do, one at a time. This first challenge, absolutely, it's going to scare me. Absolutely, I'm going to respect it. I'll absolutely call it a profit-taking zone. We're still seeing lots of bullish signals, though, and at least right now, where the bearish signals, just like so many things in the market, they may be out there, but I'm not seeing them. So that is where we find ourselves after a short week, but an eventful one in some areas. Other areas, not so much. I mean, basically hanging out, knocking on resistance door for crude. We had that nice pop early, and we've just been hanging out ever since. So kind of been the way of the market as we approach that resistance level. We're kind of seeing the same thing across the board in the market, no doubt about it. So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do the market recap for today and for this week. But as always, it is certainly my pleasure. I appreciate everybody's time. It's great to see each and every one of you. Thank you for joining me. This is always more fun to do this stuff with friends. So thank you for hanging out with me while we go over the market. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell and join us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter as well. To all of our awesome female team members, be sure to hit up the Women in Trading Mastermind group tonight. Looking forward to that. I won't be there, but I expect to hear fantastic things. I know many of you, and I know you'll have a great time, be very productive. Everybody, that's open to any female trader out there. So, hop in, have fun. We've got some great female traders and leaders over here at Tackle Trading. Value their insights and their trading experience tremendously. And so hop in, say hello, get to know them, get in the game with them. So I imagine many of you will be there, but if you're listening to this later or find us in another way, head on over to Tackle Trading and get into that Women in Trading Mastermind group. And I'm looking very forward to hearing how it goes. I won't be there, but I expect wholly to hear fantastic things about it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy the recap, it is always helpful and appreciated if you do give it a thumbs up. If you have anything you want to add, feel free to throw them at us in the comment section below. We're always happy to hear what you have to say. I am in particular always interested in another trader's perspective. So I am certainly all ears if you want to talk stock with me. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure. You guys get out of here. Have a fantastic Friday. I'm going to head over to the scouting report meeting and make sure folks are getting the job done. I usually derail it. It's what usually happens. But I'm going to go over there anyway. So get out of here. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Be ready for the scouting reports tomorrow. Get through those watch lists. But as always, make sure you spend some time doing the things you love with the people that you love. And I will see you same time and channel on Monday. So thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend.